My name is George. I've been married to the same woman, Danielle, for 55 years. And before you think that means we always knew what we were doing, let me tell you something with complete honesty. We didn't. I made mistakes. Mistakes that almost cost us our connection, our joy, and at times our hope for the future. If someone asked me today how we managed to last so long, I wouldn't talk about luck or perfect compatibility. I'd talk about 5 lessons I learned. Sometimes too late, but just in time to save what mattered most. The first is this: stop keeping score. For years, I kept an invisible list in my head. I thought about everything I did. I worked long hours, fixed things around the house, paid the bills, handled the practical problems. And when she asked for something more, I'd think to myself, what about everything else I've already done? I didn't always say it, but you could feel it. The energy shifts when you believe you're giving more than the other person. What I didn't understand is that marriage isn't a competition of sacrifices. It's not a perfectly balanced scale. There are seasons where one person carries more, and others where the other person holds everything up. When I got injured back in the 80s and couldn't work for months, it was Danielle who supported our family without a single complaint. In that moment, there was no scoreboard, just a team. If you want your relationship to last, stop measuring who does more. Start asking how you can support each other based on the season of life you're in. The second lesson was accepting that you're not married to someone's potential. I spent decades silently believing that Danielle could loosen up a bit if I just found the right way to explain it to her. She's always been organized, a planner, structured. I was spontaneous, an improviser, more laid back. And for years, I saw her way of being as something that needed to be fixed. That was a huge mistake. The day I understood that her planning wasn't rigidity, but her way of creating security, something shifted in me. It stopped being a battle of personalities and became a dance of differences. She structures the big picture. I bring surprises to the small moments. I stopped trying to change her. I started complimenting her. Don't marry someone hoping to edit them over time. Accept them today. If you can't accept the core of who that person is right now, resentment will grow like mold on the walls. The third lesson: speak up before you blow up. I used to keep quiet about little things because they didn't seem worth arguing over. And she did the same. The problem is, what goes unsaid doesn't disappear. It builds up. It turns into silent tension. Until one day it explodes over something insignificant. I remember one time I forgot to buy milk. Just milk. But the reaction was completely over the top. And I realized it wasn't about the grocery store. It was about months of small oversights that made the other person feel unheard. We learned the hard way to say that hurt my feelings or that bothered me when it was still a small thing. Uncomfortable conversations are far less dangerous than emotional explosions. If you want longevity, normalize honest dialogue. Not aggressive, not accusatory, just honest. The fourth lesson was understanding that love doesn't sustain itself. After 25 years together, we fell into autopilot. We knew each other too well. We knew what the other was going to say. We stopped asking deep questions. We talked about bills, schedules, responsibilities. We became efficient, but distant. The problem with autopilot is that you don't notice the wear and tear until it's already significant. We decided to start dating again. Not with grand gestures, with small rituals, dinner with no TV. A 20-minute walk at sunset, asking real questions. What's been on your mind lately? What's worrying you? What are you excited about? Love requires intention. It's not enough to share a roof. You have to share your presence. And the fifth lesson, maybe the most important: remember you're on the same team. There were years when every argument felt like a trial. I wanted to win. I wanted to prove I was right. But in a marriage, when one person wins and the other loses, you both lose. The real shift happened when we faced family problems that required unity. We couldn't afford to be divided. We had to truly listen to each other, negotiate, compromise, find solutions together. Since then, I've changed a phrase in my head. I stopped thinking me versus her, and started thinking us versus the problem. That transforms arguments. Instead of attacking, you ask. Instead of defending, you try to understand. Instead of proving your point, you look for a solution that protects the bond. We're not perfect. 55 years later, I still forget things. She still plans weeks in advance. Sometimes we fall back into old patterns. The difference is, now we catch ourselves sooner, and we choose to correct our course. If I could talk to my younger self on my wedding day, I'd say this: don't compete with your wife. Don't try to change her. Don't bottle up what hurts. Don't neglect the connection. And never forget that you are partners, not rivals. Time changes everything: your body, your priorities, your dreams. But if you both change while looking in the same direction, the bond only gets stronger. 55 years aren't built on perfection. They're built on a daily decision, on humility, on constant small adjustments, on the willingness to choose the same person over and over again, even when it's easier to retreat into pride. That's what I've learned. And if you're starting a relationship or you're in the middle of one wondering if it's worth the effort to keep adjusting, I'll tell you this: yes, it is, but not by magic. It's worth it because of the conscious work of two people who remember that love isn't a feeling that just stays on its own. It's a practice, and you practice it every day. But let me tell you how these lessons played out in real life. Because it's one thing to talk about them. It's another to live them when everything is falling apart around you. There was a time about 15 years ago when we almost lost everything. Not from a lack of love, but from a lack of attention. Danielle was going through a tough time at work. So was I. We were exhausted. And instead of leaning on each other, we started to drift apart, each of us fighting our own battles in silence. If you're finding this story interesting, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and let us know what city you're watching from. Let's continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. That's when I realized we were living like roommates, not like husband and wife. One night, after weeks of superficial conversations, she looked at me and said, "George, I don't know if we even know each other anymore." That broke me. Because it was true. We had become strangers under the same roof. That's when I made a decision. I grabbed an old notebook and started writing. I wrote down everything I was feeling, everything I was afraid to say, everything I'd been holding in. And then, on a Friday night, I asked her to sit with me. No TV, no phones, just the two of us. I read her what I had written, and I cried. I cried because I realized how much I had let the routine swallow what was important. I cried because I saw I was losing the woman I loved, not to betrayal or a lack of love, but to neglect. She cried too, and then she started talking. She talked about things I had no idea about, fears she was carrying alone, moments she felt invisible, times she had tried to reach out and I was too busy to notice. That night changed everything. Not because we solved all our problems, but because we decided to stop pretending everything was okay. We decided to be honest. We decided to fight for what we had built. And it was hard, really hard. We had to relearn how to listen to each other. We had to create new habits. We had to let go of pride and the need to be right to save the connection. But it worked. Slowly we found our way back to each other. Not as we were before, but as something new, something stronger. Because now we knew what we stood to lose. Another thing I've learned over these 55 years is that marriage has seasons. There are springs, when everything is in bloom. There are summers when everything is intense and vibrant. There are falls when some things have to die away to make room for the new. And there are winters, when everything feels cold and difficult. The mistake a lot of people make is thinking that winter means the end. It doesn't. It means it's time to huddle together for warmth, to take care of each other with more attention, to remember that spring always comes back. Today, when I look back, I see that the hardest times were the ones that taught us the most. They were the ones that showed us what we were made of. They were the ones that gave us the chance to choose to stay. And choosing to stay isn't passive, it's active. It's waking up every day and deciding that this person is still worth it, that the bond still matters, that the love is still worth cultivating. Some people think 55 years of marriage is a long time. I think it went by too fast. Because when you find someone worth building a life with, time flies. Of course, there were days I thought, is this worth it? Wouldn't it be easier to just give up? But every time that thought crossed my mind, I remembered one thing. Ease doesn't build anything that lasts. What builds is commitment. It's respect. It's the will to keep going even when it's hard. And Danielle has always been my partner in that. Even when we fought, even when we disagreed, she was always willing to try. Always willing to adjust. Always willing to grow with me. Today, when I see her sitting on the porch reading a book, or when I hear her humming in the kitchen, my heart still swells. Not with the fiery passion of my 20s, but with something deeper, with gratitude, with admiration, with the certainty that I chose right. 55 years aren't perfect, but they're real. They're built with patience, with forgiveness, with laughter, with tears, with tough conversations and comfortable silences. If I could sum up everything I've learned in a single sentence, it would be this. True love isn't about finding the perfect person. It's about choosing an imperfect person and building something perfect together. And that, my friend, is what makes it all worthwhile. Every day, every challenge, every adjustment, every choice to stay. Because in the end, what matters isn't how many years you lived. It's who you live them with and how you live them. I lived them with Danielle, and I'd do it all over again. The mistakes, the successes, the fights, the reconciliations, all of it. Because it was with her that I learned what it truly means to love. And if you're reading this, whether you're young and starting a relationship, or you're in the middle of the road wondering if you should keep going, let me tell you, it's worth it. But only if you're willing to do the work. Only if you're willing to choose every day. Only if you're willing to grow. Because marriage isn't a destination. It's a journey. And like any journey, it has climbs, descents, unexpected turns, and incredible views. The secret is not to give up halfway. The secret is to remember why you started. The secret is to look to your side and see that you're not alone. 55 years later, I look to my side. And there she is, my Danielle, my partner, my best decision, and that for me is everything.